guys, it's Katie at Quilt Beginnings in Dublin, Ohio, and welcome to month 4 of our Bejeweled Block of the Month program. So we are going to be doing stars this month and next month, and we're going to be doing part of our star pieced border going all the way around. And this month we're just going to be doing the cools. So these 4 different colorways. We only need 2 of this green centered one. It's going to be in this corner and then the bottom corner, but we're going to make 4 of each of these other ones. So I'm going to show you how to piece one of the blocks. It's going to be the same way for every one of them this month, just making sure that you're matching the right colors according to the pattern. But let's get started sewing. All right, so this month we are just doing our cool stars, and so we are going to be using fabrics A and E in each of our stars, and then fabrics G, H, I, J, and R are going to be our inside squares and our points. Okay, so for all of these fabrics, we're just going to cut them exactly as we have listed in the pattern. I like to pull off my strips because each of these cuts is just going to be pulling off strips. At this point, you can either pull off what's suggested in the fabric requirements section, so pulling off a fat quarter or a fat eighth, that kind of thing, or you can just cut the strips directly from your fabric. Either way, as long as you get the right number of squares and triangles, you should be good to go. I'm going to set aside my fabrics, and we're just going to look at what it takes to make a single star. So I'm going to be making block 4A, which is a fabric G center square. So this is my 3 3/8 inch square. I have 8 of my fabric R triangles, and so these were from the 2 1/4 inch squares cut in half. I've got 4 of my fabric E squares, so these were a 3 1/4 inch square cut into fourths, so point to point on the diagonal. And then I have my background, my fabric A, I've got 4 2 1/2 inch squares. So this is what we need to make each of our stars. All right, so we are going to start with our fabric R triangles and our background square. And essentially we are going to be setting this square on point. And so we have done this before. We are going to essentially be folding. I just like to finger press my square. So I get a nice crease and I know exactly where the center of my square is. I'm going to be placing my triangles so that that center point is right on that center fold. This is going to mean that my entrance and my exit, they're not going to be exactly in the V. That 1/4 inch is going to come later when we put on the second side. But we're going to start by just folding each of our background squares in half, just finger pressing them and stitching down one side. So let's see that at the machine. All right, so once again, I have my stack of background squares and I'm just going to be folding, and I like to just do this at my machine as I'm about to sew. So I just finger press right in half. I lay my fabric R, my setting triangle, whoops, scoot it so that that point is right in the center. And when I lower my foot and I come over to just a 1/4 inch, my needle is not going to be entering exactly at that V, but that is okay. I'm just going to stitch my 1/4 inch. And at the bottom as well, I'm coming out not exactly in the V, but that is exactly where we're supposed to be. So once again, with our background fabric, make sure that you're finding the right side and folding towards that, finding your center crease, laying the triangle so the point is right in the center, and stitching down with a 1/4 inch. And you can chain piece all of your different colored setting triangles to all of your different background squares, or you can just do one star at a time, depending on how you want to do it. So I'm just going to keep sewing this side. My pile of set squares, I'm going to just press out towards the corners. And we'll come down and we'll do that same thing on the other side. So now I'm going to be finger pressing these in half the other direction. And when I lay my second side, show you that, where my corner, my point is right on my pressed line. Now this, corner up here, that is going to be my 1/4 of an inch. So I can stitch right into that 1/4 of an inch and down the side and get a very good result. And once again, I'm going to press these out towards the points. And these are the points for all of the different stars. You're going to have 24 with this green R fabric, and you'll have 32 with your blue Q fabric. So if you want to make all of these units, you will be in good shape for all of your different stars. At this stage, I also like to snip off these bottom dog ears, because we'll need to do that at some point. Once we have all of our unit 1s, our squares set on point, assembled, we can actually lay out our star block. So we're going to be setting each of these with a fabric E triangle. We've got our center square. We have these on either side. We've got one on the bottom, and then again setting with the fabric E triangle. So just like we have done with a few other blocks, we're going to be assembling these essentially like a 9-patch, so essentially in rows. And we can go ahead and fold over our fabric E setting triangles and our unit 1. And I'm going to go ahead and take these over to the machine and just stitch down this side. So with our setting triangle, we should have a nice 1/4 of an inch entrance here. And then on this piece, we do want to make sure that we're going right into, of course my bobbin is white, but right kind of through that X in order to get a nice sharp point when we press this open. So I'm going to match up my corners, make sure those are nice. And again, I'm going to kind of target that X as I'm stitching. All right, and then this next piece I am going to stitch because I like to have my setting triangle on top, but I'm going to be stitching out to a nice 1/4 of an inch V on that side. All right, and just like with any 9-patch, we're going to press our rows right and then left and then right so that our seams will nest really nicely. So for this top one, I'll press out to the right for this setting triangle. For the next one, I'm going to press towards the center square. And then back out to the right towards the triangle. All right, so we'll just do that same thing on the other side, making sure with this fabric E that you have the right side. Some of the parts of this fabric E are a little bit lighter than others, so just double check you've got your right side up. So we'll just fold these over and stitch them at our machine as well. So these rows I'm actually going to flip over because I like to have that smaller piece on top. So I'm going to be stitching down and out that nice 1/4 inch V. I'll flip this over so that I can see my, my point, my X that I'm targeting on top. Make sure that my edges line up. And then on this bottom one, I'm going to stitch into my V and out the bottom. So you've got two options here. We can press a row to the right and then the left and then the right, but it actually might be nice to press these setting triangles out. And then both of these seams towards that center square. So as long as our seams on each row are going opposite of each other, we should be good. I'm going to press this setting triangle out as well. Okay, so then now I know I've got these seams going out, these seams going in, and these seams going out. Now I'm just going to stitch my rows together. So I've got a really nice way to butt up my seams. I'm going to stitch this and then the bottom, and we will take a look at our finished star. So when I do each side, I just like to pinch my seam, make sure that that's nice and lined up, and then make sure if you haven't pressed that you take your other side and just flip it out so that you don't stitch it into this seam. Kind of hold it out of the way. All right, once I go through my first seam, then I come down and I just pinch my second seam, kind of make sure that one's lined up. And some people like to pin. I really think fingers give me better control. I want to make sure I go through my X and then over my seam and out the bottom. All right, then I'm going to press both of these sides out. Give them a nice press. I'll flip it and do this side. And then the last thing that we need to do is just snip all of our pairs of dog ears. So you can use scissors. I actually might just use a rotary cutter. I think it's a little bit quicker and easier. Just making sure I'm not cutting off any of my square with just those little dog ears. And that's it. So you will be making 2 of this exact color configuration and then 4 of each of the other color combinations. But that's going to be our star for this month. So let's see it over on our quilt. So that's it. All right, so go ahead and stitch out all of these blocks for this month, and then next month we'll come back and do our warm colored stars. See you then.